Okay, excellent. Let's get started. So first off, hello everyone. Welcome to the Future Ada Anti-OSINT workshop. I hope you all are having a wonderful weekend, and I really want to start by saying thank you so much for being flexible. I know we are a week later than our anticipated date, so thank you so much for being able to schedule around that and being able to make it today. And I also want to say thank you to everyone because whether by donating, helping spread the word, or participating in giving us feedback, we truly appreciate all of your support. Um, Today's workshop follows last month's Neighborhood OSINT workshop. Now, if you haven't watched or participated in the previous workshop, you should still be able to follow along and get some insightful tips on digital privacy. And you will also find a link to it in our next slide. So who are we? Who is Future Ada? Well, we're a 501c3 nonprofit out of the lovely Spokane, Washington area. And we have a new mission for 2021, which is bridging digital privacy and security with inclusion and STEAM to create a brighter future for everyone. I'm Emilie St. Pierre. I'm proud to be the Security Ambassador for Future Ada. And I'm also staff for our open office hours, where we offer free privacy and security help to the community. And it's really, everyone is welcome to sign up if you need any kind of, not just privacy and security help, but even IT help. We've fielded those questions before. My technical background is as a security researcher. I've been doing ethical hacking and / offensive security testing and research for about 8 years now. As I mentioned previously, I hosted our last workshop called Neighborhood OSINT, which is a precursor to this workshop last month. And you can find a video as well as the slides for that workshop on our website at futureada.org, privacy-security, or under the privacy and security program page within our menu. We do have some upcoming events. Next month, I will be hosting a hands-on workshop, which will cover an introduction to OSINT and ethical disclosure. So this is a first for us. We haven't done a hands-on workshop of this type before, so it's pretty exciting. We'll be looking at how to piece together different types of information on a user to see how their identity might be uncovered. And then we're also going to be looking at how to ethically disclose this information to individual users and how to approach disclosure in a friendly and safe manner. Space for this one is quite limited. It's no more than 40 user registrations. So if this is something that's interesting to you or you would like to participate, I suggest registering sooner rather than later. And we will also have a Future Ada online social at the end of the month, next month, which is already starting tomorrow. And for these online socials, these are really low-key events. They're here so that you can come by for a few minutes or for the whole social if you want, say hi, and of course, show off your adorable pets. We're all about that at Future Ada, so you are welcome to stop by. As we get into our workshop, I wanted to give a quick heads up that some examples will focus on our wonderful and beloved city of Spokane and its area, since that's where we are located. However, you'll find that a lot of the resources that are being shared today are applicable to residents throughout the United States, and some of them are even applicable internationally. Of course, each municipality, county, state, province, country are different, And a simple search engine query should be sufficient to find your local equivalent for those Spokane or Washington state-centric examples. So who is this workshop for? Well, perhaps you were in attendance at our last workshop, which made you aware of privacy and security issues. Perhaps you're interested in taking back control over your information. Maybe you have some specific security safety concerns, or you're just curious about online privacy and or security. You all are welcome here today. I only mentioned this because this workshop makes some assumptions on your security risk or threat model. And I'm making the assumption for today's workshop, that your security risk is currently low, right? So I'm assuming here that you're not in imminent danger, you're not being actively stalked or harassed, but rather I'm assuming that, you're not, you want people around you, like neighbors, colleagues, people you interact with generally. You don't really want them to have an easy time figuring out maybe where you live, your personal email, family member names, email addresses, phone numbers, and more, right? Maybe you're here because you want to reclaim some level of agency over your personal data. So that's really what we're assuming today. However, if you have a higher security risk currently, I invite you to schedule some time via our open office hours, or you can also look through our list of resources for the US and Spokane area, which is listed in the resources section of our online abuse workshop slides. And I have linked them here, but you can also find them at the previously mentioned link, futureada.org, under our privacy and security program. All of our videos and slides are listed there and for your viewing pleasure. So as we go through some of the different anti-OSINT remediations today, you may notice a pattern. And it's that achieving a greater level of privacy comes at a cost. And because your level of privacy directly impacts your level of security and safety, i.e. the more information I have about you, the better I can target you, right? So based on that, it stands to reason that there's also a cost to security. Achieving privacy and security requires obviously money. You'll see some of that in our examples today. It requires an enormous amount of time. It requires knowledge. It's not always obvious to people that aren't familiar with these concepts to understand how maybe data flows, how maybe data is shared or sold or repackaged and populated. And so it does require a certain level of knowledge to be able to achieve privacy. You'll require knowledge of how your data is, how data works, especially digitally. It will require support from your household, from your network. Again, depending on your threat model, and the level of privacy you wish to achieve, you may need support from, typically you'll need support from everyone in your household. If I have a partner that lives with myself and I'm the only one out of the two of us who is currently trying to maintain and achieve a certain level of privacy, well, if my partner doesn't do the same, well, then anyone that simply knows my partner's name might be able to find all of that information to target me as well. Or if your network, your friends, your family members, for example, post pictures of you online, that might also compromise your privacy. So you do have to have those conversations with your household members, with your network, if you are trying to achieve a certain level of privacy. And also, it will require a continuous effort. Data is continuously repopulated, redistributed, sold, resold, and acquired. And so you can't just, unfortunately, I wish it was that way, but you can't simply remove yourself from people's search engines, from different websites, and assume it's one and done. Unfortunately, it requires a continuous effort. Privacy is also not accessible to everyone equally because of those aforementioned costs, and because, you know, they or we, I say we because I belong to some of these groups, because they tend to be targeted more often. You know, it's harder for underrepresented groups, visible religious minorities, LGBTQ plus members, victims and survivors of crime, especially within the context of domestic violence and abuse. It is harder for these groups to achieve privacy. Interestingly, Washington State explicitly recognizes the right to privacy within its state constitution, but in practice, especially when it comes to consumer or data privacy, this is not the case. As we will see throughout this workshop, you know, there's a lot of work to be done, and I invite you to get involved with your own local privacy advocacy groups to help make privacy and security achievable and accessible to all. That's definitely one of our goals here at Future Data. We always mention security, privacy for all. That's definitely a goal that we would love to see happen one day. And so we invite you to get involved. Okay, with that being said, let's get started on section 1, getting ready for removal requests. Achieving control over our data or your data will both be a long-term and ongoing project. As such, it's going to require organization. So before tackling data removal requests, I suggest getting things ready, right? So I've started with a list here of just 4 items. The items which are in bold are definitely required. And the items that are not in bold, like number 3 here, they're not required, but they can be very helpful in achieving even a certain level of privacy or an even higher or further level of privacy. So first, whenever tackling this kind of project, I love lists and I love spreadsheets, and we're gonna see some of them later. But first, you know, I suggest listing your residential address or addresses if you are maybe going in between residences or you have more than one residence. And then, you know, make a diagram of the names of your household members. Maybe you are someone who has a married name, so you want you go by different names, so you want to list all of your different names, aliases, emails, phone numbers, and again, people living in your household, and maybe also their emails and phone numbers if you know them. I'm not going to have you go ask family members or household members to list all of their user accounts. We'll just focus on your own, because then, you know, each person has to go through their own privacy journey, but hopefully you'll be able to get a sense of maybe what kind of information is related to your household online. So once you have that list, I invite you to create an email address or several email addresses for your data removal requests. At this point, you might also start thinking of maybe implementing different email addresses for different logins. What I mean by that is I want to introduce a concept of having one email address per user account. And we're going to go over how we can do that with custom domains shortly, but it's something you might want to think about. Obviously, it's very resource intensive and it's not required for data removal, but it's something that will enhance your privacy. And number 4 on this list is having a password manager. It will be very difficult to achieve privacy without a password manager, and especially security. Password managers will help us make unique, strong, random passwords store them securely. But especially if you're thinking about going the different email addresses for different logins route, you'll need a place to remember all of this data. And I don't know about you, but I have a hard time remembering what I did last week. And so I really need a place that is secure, that's encrypted, that I can trust, where I can have all of this data. A few other steps. If you have a calendar that you use, whatever your favorite calendar is, go ahead and schedule some time and reminders on, hey, let's set aside an hour here and there for, during lunchtime maybe, to just continue our removal requests. Maybe you want to set a monthly or quarterly reminder to do certain privacy checkups. I also recommend looking up our neighborhood OSINT techniques workshop that I mentioned previously, and also Googling all of the information which you listed under bullet point 1. So go ahead and Google and just keep in mind what those search results are. And maybe you want to keep track of them, list them, note them. In number 7, a tracking list. There's different ways to do this. I really enjoy inteltechniques.com's data privacy workbook. I will also present a data removal spreadsheet I have created for everyone today, and also list all of your social media accounts that you listed in step 1. We are going to go over that in a little bit. Okay, so what's the easiest, lowest cost way to get ready for data removal requests? Well, just super simple. Create a new personal Protonmail if you don't have one. I recommend Protonmail. You can substitute it maybe for another encrypted email service of your choice, but I think it's great. It's free. It doesn't, it's not invasive, and so I recommend using it. I also recommend getting a LastPass as a password manager. The reason for that is that it's one of the only password managers that is free to use, that is also pretty user-friendly. Unfortunately, they have changed their free plan recently, and now you can only get LastPass to be free for one device. So while you're planning out your attack plan for your privacy, think about how you're going to be approaching it. Will it be via a mobile device or a browser? And install LastPass wherever you know you will need it most. And if you are looking to sync it across different devices, it's not too bad. From a price perspective, it's $3 a month if you want to take that account and have it sync across your mobile device and your browser, for example. I recommend registering your LastPass account under your personal Protonmail account. Maybe if you just created it, that's the one. Maybe you already have one, fantastic. And again, I recommend using LastPass to make sure all your passwords are strong and unique. Once you have that set up, I recommend creating a second Protonmail account to contact the data removal sites. This is, again, it's free, which is great. If you want to make things easier for yourself, you can also subscribe to Protonmail Plus. It's $4 a month, comes with a few different perks. But what's nice, especially, is that it keeps your personal email and adds up to 5 email aliases. So you can create an email alias for your junk data removal requests, and then just use that one to contact different websites as necessary. And of course, finally, implement two-factor authentication for your Protonmail and LastPass accounts. Don't take the chance to leave all of your account information. Is very valuable. Secure it as much as you can. And so again, 6 steps here, and we have both free or at least low cost options for achieving while getting ready to achieve a higher level of privacy. I mentioned that earlier. If we want to take that a step further, unique emails, right? Why have a different email per account? This is really, really great to understand who's sharing or selling your data. I do a lot of privacy and security research, and I found that it's been really interesting to understand, not just who's sharing your data, like all of a sudden you might start getting marketing emails from a certain vendor, and now you know who either shared or sold your data to the person who's contacting you, or the mailing list or spam that's contacting you. It also is helpful to understand what companies might have been breached if you find that your unique user account ends up in a data breach. It also makes it harder to do password guessing attacks. And this is because if you're reusing the same email across different portals, let's say you reuse your email across Twitter, Facebook, different social media. Now, if I'll maybe be able to try to do a password guessing attack on all of these different portals. It just makes it easier because I already know what your email will be because you're reusing it. It's even easier, of course, if you're reusing your password. But in my line of work, I've also seen people kind of tweak their password across different login portals or across different types of accounts in a similar pattern so that I was able to guess their password. Again, it's just an extra layer of the prevention against these types of attacks. And finally, it's harder to guess where you have registered accounts. One example for this, I'll say, is a lot of doctors' offices, lawyers' offices, different types of offices due to COVID will have new public-facing, websites and portals for you to sign into. Maybe you talk to your doctor across a specific portal. If you're reusing your same email, well, then I can maybe guess where you go to the doctor. Where's your doctor? Maybe where's your lawyer, etc. So it does make that harder to guess. It's really nice to have that extra layer of protection. One caveat, of course, if you're using a custom domain for an email, like let's say I'm using mydomain.com, but somehow mydomain.com gets tied to my actual identity, well, then it doesn't matter, if I have unique emails in the sense that, I'll just go through breach data and whatever matches mydomain.com, I know it's you. So again, just a caveat. And there's approaches you can take to this. You can use company name at domain.com, which is easier to remember, or you can use random strings. I guess an example of that is, for example, if you go to Safeway and you want to subscribe to a Safeway card, you can use Safeway at domain.com. Or if you don't want to do that because you don't want to be predictable in your patterns, you can just use a random string at domain.com. Again, just requires a little bit more tracking. Okay, so what are some low-cost options to the unique email approach? Free privacy encryption forward solutions, kind of like I mentioned earlier. Protonmail, Tutanota, Mailfence are really great. The only caveat, though, is that it's time intensive. It requires tracking. Again, a password manager is best for that. But just because you don't want, if you don't want to set up your own custom domain, that's fine. You'll still have those low cost or free options available to you. Now, if you do want to go the custom domain route, it's pretty straightforward. You can register a domain typically for about $10 a year. You can register a PO box beforehand because it is necessary for you to register with a physical address so that you can register a domain. So you can, again, these are additional costs. I'll let you do that risk versus value calculation on your end, depending on your threat model. But again, something to consider. Preferably you want to use a domain that is not necessarily tied to you, right? Not your username that you use everywhere.com, not your full name.com, but maybe just something fun that's not necessarily tied to you, .com, .net, .us, just something that's fun for you. I like Namecheap and Google Domains. The reason for that is that they include catch-all forwarding, email forwarding for no further cost. So that's going to be really nice in that you set up your domain and then you can set up a wildcard or a catch-all email, and it will send all of those emails to an inbox of your choice. It also includes Whois privacy protection for free. So Whois privacy protection, if you're not familiar with that, just means that when you register your domain, it ensures that your full name, that address, whatever you are using as far as information to register your domain, it will not be available to the public. So that's what it means. It also includes DNSEC. That's just a little something extra to help prevent DNS-based attacks. It's not very important at this time, but just thought it's a nice plus. If you want a truly privacy-focused registrar, there's Njala or Nyala, I think, however you pronounce it, but this is about $18 a year. It does permit you to register domains with Bitcoin, for example, if you want to go the super crazy privacy route. So again, depends on your threat model. These are options available to you. For first timers that are doing this and considering doing this, I'm just giving you a little bit of an overview of how to do this for Namecheap. So just ensure again that you auto renew both the Whois guard, the protection, and also your subscription. Don't let your domain just expire. That can be troublesome otherwise. And so for Namecheap, you'll want to do auto renew on for payment Whois guard, and under advanced DNS, enable DNSEC. And as I mentioned, under redirect email, select catch all and enter the email of your choice that you want that email traffic to be forwarded to. So maybe that's a Protonmail account that you set up earlier, maybe a different email account. But this is so that whenever you sign up for a new account using, that new custom domain, all of that will be forwarded to the email inbox of your choice. Just going to make things easier. And then you can do the same thing for Google Domains. Just make sure, again, you renew billing, DNSSEC is enabled, and enable the wildcard email forwarding by just entering the wildcard symbol under the control panel. So once you have custom email domain set up, make sure to test it a few times, make sure it's working. And I suggest not changing everything at once. Maybe try out 1 or 2 non-essential accounts first, and then expand from there. You should be able to receive email from really just absolutely anything at yourdomain.com. You can also make sure that that email is fully encrypted. This is something that you can do with Protonmail. However, it is a paid feature. So if you want to both send encrypted email from like a user at yourdomain.com, and also make sure that email that is forwarded to you is encrypted, or encrypted more so than it would be, for example, using the Google or Namecheap registrars. You can also set that up, but it is, again, $4 a month to start. Okay. That was a lot of setup, I feel like. So once you have that set up, take a break, pat yourself on the back. You've been doing a great job. And then we'll get ready for removal requests. In the last workshop, you may recall, if you were if you followed along, that we asked a question starting with a physical address, what information can we find? So that was one of the questions we wanted to answer in our previous workshop. And in one example, we found that several realty websites contain property details based on an address, as well as pictures of the interior, the exterior of, a property based on its address. So although we didn't spend much time on them, another place to find information if you're starting with an address as a starting point, right? One place that's notorious for that are people search engines. So by that, I mean Spokeo, Truthfinder, White Pages. These types of websites are notorious for linking an address to a name, family member names, date of birth, emails, phone numbers, and more, because that's literally their business model. They collect information and they repackage it and they sell it. So another example we saw in the workshop, which was, a bit more interesting, was that we saw that insurance companies leak information via their car insurance quote pages. We saw that especially with State Farm, where we could find past and or current residents, related people. We could also find vehicle, year, make, model, last four digits of the VIN, and then we could complete that information by going through to Farmers Insurance and finding the full VIN of a vehicle. And from there, we had started finding more information. So based on these three things, right? Realty websites, people search engines, and insurance quote websites. I've created a data removal spreadsheet to keep track of your removal progress. It's available here at this website, but we will link it after the workshop to our website. So it's just a little bit easier to access for you. I invite you to copy it, edit it, keep track of your progress. Let me give you an example of what it looks like here. So I have, I don't know, I guess something went wrong. I know what I have here. Here you go. Great. So I have a data removal spreadsheet, which includes people search engines, realty, and I should actually add, okay, I'll add that later, insurance companies. In yellow is a list of people search engines. Thank you to inteltechniques.com's workbook for this. They are the reference I have used for this. Under this will be realty websites so that you can, again, do a search and keep track of, have you removed your property pictures from these different websites, and then removal request dates, and keeping track of anything that is necessary for you to, again, take control of your online digital footprint. In orange are the two insurance companies that I mentioned in our last workshop, so State Farm and Farmers Insurance. The only thing is I cannot guarantee that they will actually remove your data. If you are a California resident and you are listening to this right now, you might be surprised because I did find that California residents have their data shown on these websites, and I have zero idea how you can remove your information from that website in a permanent to semi-permanent fashion. I have tried to contact these insurance companies directly. I have never heard back. For California residents, that might legally be an issue that you might pursue. But again, the best I can tell you is, hey, if you request your data to be removed and it works, please email me. I would be super interested in knowing if you can finally get your data removed from these websites. So yeah, so that's a tool for you to use. And it's completely free. It's just very time intensive. So make sure to use those calendar reminders and make sure to break it apart and take some breaks. Another solution isn't the world wonderful when you can afford things, is automated removals. There are data removal services online. Some of them, there's two main ones that I know and have been recommended to me, and one of them I use actually. So one is called Join Delete Me, and it removes your information from the top 30 sources of data. So those data brokers, AKA those people search engine companies. There's also Privacy Duck, which has 2 tiers. There's one tier that removes data from 91 sources, and another VIP tier that removes your data from 190 sources. Obviously, Privacy Duck is a bit pricier. The first tier is pricey, and then it kind of splits to 50% of the original price per person every year after that. So again, these are 2 companies to consider. And I've seen a difference. It's especially great just so that you don't have to spend so many hours and so much time removing that data manually. Okay, section 3 is public records. One of the trickiest things to remove from online databases, online websites are public records. Typically, again, as the name suggests, they can never be fully removed from public access. There are some exceptions that we'll go over in a little bit. For property and business records, if you live at an address and you are renting from a company or someone who is not affiliated for you, like you're not renting from your family member, it should be fairly easy. This doesn't really apply to you. You will not appear on these types of records. Like when we did our workshop last month, we looked at these Spokane County property records. And so you wouldn't show up on there unless, again, this was somehow your property or maybe a family member. So for public records, you can try a privacy by obscurity kind of approach. And so you could contact your county municipal clerk's office and ask them about online data removal. There's no guarantee. And if you can get some data removed, but not all of the historical records, such as tax records, for example, that has your name, or property records, your name might still be tied to that address. It's kind of hit or miss. If you do try to contact your clerk's office, make sure that you have a good reason, be prepared, be polite, be nice, be helpful, and hopefully that will go well for you. If you have a higher risk model than the one we're currently working with today, I recommend seeing Michael Bazel's Extreme Privacy, What It Takes to Disappear, 2nd edition book. You will find that it's incredibly costly if you're a property owner to achieve true privacy and make sure that your names are not part of any public property and business records. It involves literally moving, buying a new property, getting a trust put in. It requires a lot of steps. So again, very costly scenario. If you can do it, great. But I would recommend it if you really only for those high risk threat models. Another type of record we looked at during the workshop was voter records. If you're not a citizen, I became American recently. And so before I was a citizen, it's great. My information was not in the voter records, especially for Washington State. It was pretty nice, but then I became a citizen and I wanted to participate in my local politics and exercise my right to vote. And so I registered, and won't you know it, now my information is publicly available and there's not much I can do about it. So if you are moving states, soon, great. Just cancel your voter registration in your current state and just don't register to vote in your wherever state you're going if you're in the US. If you wish to vote anyway, and you're like, I'll take the risk of having my information out there just so that I can exercise my right to vote, well, depending on which state you're in, but for Washington State, don't register for a party unless it's necessary. And don't offer any additional information such as phone numbers. It's not necessary for you to register, just leave that blank. Otherwise, when I go to request the Washington State voter record data, well, now I have an extra piece of information on you. And so that's one approach. Now, if you have a higher risk model, there's Washington State's Address Confidentiality Program. So this is specifically for victims and survivors of stalking, harassment, abuse, domestic violence. This program helps you hide your voter registration data. It helps you hide your marriage license data. However, it does require relocation. Again, costly option. But I have included the link to this program if this is something that you might want to consider for yourself, or even just be aware of the program in case someone asks you about this one day. I didn't know about it until recently. I think it's a wonderful program. So it's out there for you for residents of Washington State. Another thing we looked at were court records, criminal records, civil records. For Washington State, some criminal court records can be sealed or destroyed. It really depends. For example, if you're a juvenile, I want to say marijuana related charges as well. It really depends. It's very specific court records that can be sealed or destroyed. For civil court records, you can actually request a hearing for the sealing of the record as a whole or part of the record. If there's perhaps your personal information, your address is within a civil court record, you may be lucky and get that kind of sealed. However, it's part of the legal process, so it's probably best to hire an attorney, which again comes with certain costs. I have never tried it myself to do it for myself, so if you have and you've had a great experience doing that, please let me know. I'm always interested in hearing those stories. Okay, this brings us to section 4. We've got about 15 minutes left here, so we'll be right on time. So section 4 will be pretty fast because for our neighborhood OSINT, really we focused on two particular sites, especially regarding social media. The first one was Nextdoor. I had an example where I showed, a picture of Nextdoor and how it contains, so much great information on neighborhoods and neighborhood residents. Profile pictures, household members, pets, employers, emails, interests, who's their doctor, where they shop. There's just so much information on Nextdoor. Now, if you are subscribed to Nextdoor, I recommend removing your account, of course. Before doing that, you should change all your data to false data. This is just, again, helpful to kind of start thinking about spreading disinformation or spreading or embracing false data, really. If you want to keep your Nextdoor account for any reason, such as maybe research, I would suggest you use the least amount of data necessary. Always use false data, or even better, the previous owner of your property's data. That's great. Or if you're renting, your landlord's data. I also recommend using a fake picture if you'd like. A great website to get fake pictures. I don't know how I can pronounce pictures today. thispersondoesnotexist.com. Every time you reload this website, it creates a new computer-generated image of a person. It's actually really, really fun, especially if you reload it a couple times until you find someone that might look like you, but is not you, but maybe confusing. This is really great for that. I use it for my fake social media profiles all the time. It's a really great resource without having to use a person's pictures without their consent. So I really like that website. And of course, keep everything as private as possible. I mean, just lock down your privacy settings on your account as much as it will let you. And then same thing with Google Maps and review sites. One of the examples we showed during the workshop was how we were able to find, who goes to what doctor, who went to prison, who went to a specific lawyer, because they were leaving reviews under their full name, or they were leaving enough information that we could corroborate this information with other pieces of information and unmask who that person was. And so I suggest simply removing all Google Map reviews and changing your display name and changing your Google account name to one that is not yours. And I also recommend doing a privacy and security check of your Google account settings. Do the same for Yelp, Facebook, and other review sites. I also just recommend just deleting your information off of Yelp and deleting Facebook, but I know that these types of ultimatum approaches to privacy aren't always a solution to everyone. So do what you can and try to use as little information about yourself as possible. Embrace false data, close accounts if you can, and use different names or emails like we talked about earlier for your different accounts. Start changing your emails for the different accounts. Oh, I have a typo here. Getting involved, section 5. So I talked when we started about the cost of privacy, right? About how privacy is not necessarily accessible to everyone equally. And as we went through the slides, I kind of kept tabs on the different options and scenarios, the different resources or tools. I wanted to keep their prices and their price range in mind so that we could just have this kind of fun game of seeing how much it would cost per year per person to achieve different levels of privacy. So at minimum, if you follow kind of everything in the list that I've shown you, it would come to about $303 per year per person. That's, of course, if you use a password manager, Protonmail Plus, register one domain, register PO Box, and decide to go for the cheaper data removal service. You decide to go for Delete Me. If you decide to do all of these options, it starts at $303 per year. And it can extend itself, basically. I didn't even put in legal costs. I didn't put in relocation costs, additional costs, like phone number plans, anonymous credit card services. VPNs is included under Protonmail Plus in there. But just all of these enormous fees, maybe like getting a new cell phone, because you're getting a new phone number and you want a new cell phone as well. And maybe you need 2 cell phones, maybe you need like a little Faraday bag. All of these costs really add up. And so, and that's not without saying, also the time costs and the emotional costs of achieving privacy. So this was really just a little thought experiment that I wanted to put out there because there's a tangible cost to privacy. And it's important that we understand that when we talk about privacy and accessibility. So I invite you to get involved. If you want privacy and security to be affordable, equitable, accessible to all, and you are part of an organization that endorses free expression, security, privacy, creativity, and knowledge, I invite you to come check out the Electronic Frontier Alliance and think about joining this group. Future ADA, full disclosure, is a part of the Electronic Frontier Alliance. We find that it is a wonderful group of very talented organizations that do a lot of great work with the community. They do a lot of great legal work, activism work, and it's really inspiring. So check them out. And if you're in Washington State and you're a part of a community which has been historically impacted by technologies, consider joining the Tech Equity Coalition. They are a part of the ACLU of Washington, and they also do really amazing work in trying to help protect us as consumers, as residents of Washington against privacy invasions, and help us get legal frameworks in place and legal protection in place regarding consumer privacy. So I invite you to check this out. I also have resources if you want to learn more about privacy. I mentioned it earlier, but the guide called Extreme Privacy, What It Takes to Disappear, second edition by Michael Bazel is phenomenal. There's also a free cyber civil rights online removal guide to help you remove not just your own data, but maybe unwanted data on different platforms, social media platforms. I also really loved this book called A Public Service, Whistleblowing, Disclosure, and Anonymity by Tim Schwartz. It has a lot of different guides and goes over how to approach total anonymity, if that's something that you'd be interested in learning more about. I also recommend the EFF. They have plenty of different guides that are really nice, like they're just nice bite-sized guides that go in depth into different privacy or surveillance self-defense related themes, like how to make good passwords, what's a VPN, like different considerations, but they're very, very approachable. So I love that. And a fellow EFA organization, the Cypher Collective out of New York City. They do amazing presentations and workshops, and I invite you to also take a look at some of their presentation materials. They're so talented and they have really great guest speakers, so I invite you to check them out. And this brings us to the end of our workshop. Again, I want to say thank you to everyone for participating, for registering, and for supporting us. We wouldn't be here without your support. And we're always here if you have any questions, whether you want to take them online here right now, or you want to take those questions offline. I'm always happy to help have a conversation and help anyone in the community, whether it be around Spokane or outside of Spokane. We're here to help. So with that, I'm going to stop the recording, and please raise your hand if you have any questions. Rebecca will be helping me field those questions. And thank you, Rebecca. And also, who is Rebecca? Rebecca is our wonderful founder. She is the founder of Future ADA. So I hope you get the pleasure to meet her. And thank you so much for helping me field those questions.